Hello, my name is Kenneth Gates, and for this week's self-assessment, I just want to review Machia Chapter 5, dealing with mission and navigating the journey. Chapter 2, Lucinda West case study about a woman named Maria who's a doctoral student, and just kind of share how those readings really impacted me this week as I was engaging in the readings and reflection and some of the things I believe that God revealed to me during the week. Starting off with Machia, chapter 5, dealing with missions. It was a very interesting chapter, especially learning about the gentleman, Judson, who we know as Judson Press. But one of the things that I found interesting about chapter 5 was dealing with the emphasis on missions in particular, and discernment and discerning what your mission is. And Machia kind of use Paul as an example of someone who discovered his mission and was relentless in discerning at pursuing the mission. And it kind of dawned on me this week as I was engaged in the readings. Now, I wrote down in my notes that my ministry, the way I've approached ministry, has been very missionary minded, mindful minded, I guess. And I say that when I came to Christ at a very young age, about the age of 11, I came to Christ not through the traditional growing up in the church route. My family didn't go to church. But I came to church by virtue of an outreach program that was involved in my community. Some college students who decided to become urban missionaries for the summer and ran summer programs in our neighborhood and at the local church. And that's how I got affiliated with the church. And the Lord began to move in my life and speak to me. And I've never left the church since. But my first encounter with the church was through inner city missionaries. And so I've always kind of, as I've gone through ministry, I've always had more of a missions focus toward my ministry, in a sense where I recognize that I was not supposed to be places for a long period of time, but that I had a specific role to play in the communities that I was assigned to. And after that work was up, it was time for me to move on. And I always had the sense, this discernment that I've sensed that God was shifting me to other places. And so I've never felt comfortable in any environment. And not to say I don't adapt or I don't fit in, but there's always been a kind of restlessness or a sense of this is not my home. There's something else out there that I need to be focused on. And so I've always kind of had that kind of discernment as I've engaged in ministry, and it has allowed me the freedom, the flexibility to be able to sense when God says time is up and be able to move. And so as I begin to rethink my purpose and rethink my mission and my vision, I'm clear on that God has called me to be a missionary. Now, as a missionary, that sometimes comes out as a chaplain, sometimes as a pastor, but I believe God has called me to be a missionary, to go to a specific community or communities for a period of time to help them grow in their faith and utilize my skills as a teacher or teaching and sharing the gospel and sharing love and compassion for a period of time while I'm there, and then being comfortable enough to be able to leave and trust that my work was complete. And so whenever I've left a place, I never felt like I left the place with my work not being done. I've always felt like when God has moved me with the understanding that the work that I was sent to do has been complete. And so I guess this week I've learned, it dawned on me, and I wrote down once again that I'm a missionary and that my call is to be a missionary, to be a missionary to God's people, however that may look, whatever title or position that might mean. And so it was a really good revelation to kind of experience this week. And then on the heels of that, reading Navigating the Journey, chapter 2, was really triggering for myself as well as my colleagues as I read some of the posts and some of the conversations that were taking place and being involved in some of the conversations. It was really interesting to read that case study about Sister Maria and her family as she's going to pursue her doctoral studies and the struggles that she encountered on her journey. I've been fortunate enough in that to have a wife who collectively, she and I have been married almost 13 years to get, but in the midst of our 13-year marriage, which we'll celebrate next month, we've been in school probably 10 of those years. She was working on her MDiv when we got married. And then once she finished her MDiv, I ended up going and getting my DMin. And then after I finished my DMin, she ended up finishing a master's in pastoral studies and with a concentration in Christian counseling. Then I went back and got a master's degree in organizational leadership. And then she went back and got a certificate in marriage and family therapy. And so we're used to being in school. We're used to having one of us in school at a certain period of time. And so we've kind of have developed a system of being able to function, because school it's a part of our marriage, it seems like. And so we're used to one of us being in school together. The interesting thing now is as our children have gotten older, I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, where when I was doing my doctoral ministry, my 7-year-old was maybe just born as I was completing it. But my 4-year-old wasn't there. And then, but going through the second master's program, they were both there, but they were very young. And so we were able to have a schedule because they were young, where I can work around the schedule. But now that they're both growing and they're involved, trying to find that balance has been challenging, especially as I was reading the strategies. Loyalty and trustworthiness has been something that I've been wrestling with my children. Not so much with my wife. My wife and I are very consistent at doing some of the things we enjoy doing, like How to Get Away with Murder, how to watch Survivor on Wednesdays, kind of creating that time for us to have together as a couple. But struggling with my children and having at times to let them down. And Maria in the case study was fortunate because her children were a little older, so she was able to let them down. They were able to grasp it. But when Daddy says, when I tell my girls that Daddy says we can't go see Grandma and Granddad this week because Daddy's tired from traveling from residency and just wants a weekend at home to kind of focus on work, they don't get that. And so I disappointed them. And after I had promised that we would go, and I had to kind of walk back on that promise and explain my decision. And so we're going through a period with our children where we're teaching them that, hey, we're not going to always do what we hope to do. And that's a struggle for me, because I think part of my personality is I want to please people. I'm a people pleaser. So, I struggle with even my own children, wanting to please my own children and disappointing them and kind of feeling that weight and the guilt, but also knowing what was best for me. That it wasn't best for me to travel as I'm not feeling well. I wasn't feeling well last weekend, and I just needed some time to kind of be at home and kind of enjoy home after being on the road for several weeks with work and then with the residency and the pressure of school. And so loyalty and trustworthiness, I think, was a key point that I took away from that chapter, and finding out ways to do that with my children. My wife and I feel like we are thankfully at a good place, but I find that struggle being with my children is that making sure that I'm keeping my word. And if I say we're going to the park, we go to the park, and following through on those commitments. My kids are excited that we are in school. I am in school. The idea of Daddy in school is funny to them, and that Daddy has homework, and they are still they don't fully understand what I'm doing, but they do get a kick out of that. And so my prayer this week was just basically that, for God just to continue to reveal to me what's my purpose moving forward. I'm at a place right now in my ministry where I recognize that my time may be coming to a halt very soon. I'm getting a sense of this. I'm discerning that the Lord may be moving me soon. However, I'm still present where I am until the Lord says otherwise. Thank you. Have a good day.